Okay, what I have here is my 2007 9.9. It's the Mercury long-legged 4-stroke Pro Kicker model. It's got about 300 hours on it, but it's been really running rough. It doesn't like to idle. When I'm out there and I'm trolling on it, I have to pull the choke out just a little bit. So what we're going to do is take the carburetor off of this, check the jets on it, and wash it all clean. Now I've opened up the side on this, taken the cover off of the engine, and what you're looking at is the carburetor. Now on this carburetor it's very similar to like the 15 horse and the 8s, and what I'm going to do here is this carburetor here, I have to take off these two linkages. There's two bolts, one on the outside here and one that's back in behind this emissions control unit. Now there's one hose and this one just pulls straight forward out. This one here I'll be taking off of here. I have another hose that comes off the back of the bowl area and a final one that's down here. Once I've done that, that whole carburetor should come out of there and we'll be ready to disassemble the bowl area, which is the bottom here, and see whether we've got some dirt in there plugging up the jets. Now because this one has never been adjusted from factory settings, I'm just going to make sure that I mark and measure things as necessary as I go along. Now one of them is this throttle control here. The amount of rod that sticks out the end past that screw is actually fairly critical for the max speed on this unit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a razor knife and put a really tiny little mark on both sides of that screw, so later on when I put it back together I'll be able to match it up between the razor marks. And that's all there is to that part of it. Now we just continue taking the rest of it apart. Okay, I've taken out the one rod. That's pretty simple. You just pull her off to the side. And this one here, I've just loosened the screw on it for the throttle. And we're just going to pull that one out of there as well. And get her off that throttle rod. So those are disconnected. Now my next trick is I'll go on to taking off those hoses. This one here is just a pretty simple pull off. This one here, the vent was down and in behind, it just pulls out of there. Now the other one, when we take the carb out and the lower one here, we'll get them both once the carb unit comes out of there. Now because I'm in Canada, these bolts are metric, so that's a 10 millimeter. So what I'm going to do is take out this bolt here, then I'm going to reach in behind and I'm going to take out the back one, and that'll release the whole carburetor unit. Oh yeah. Now when I'm looking in this carburetor right now, I'm seeing a lot of the miscellaneous purple and dirt that comes out of our gasoline at some of our marine tanks up here. Now the bottom one's gone off fairly easy. There's a bit of gasoline will come out of there. Now the other one's got a clip, so release that clip, and you may have to fight this one a little bit more, or possibly get yourself a set of rubber jawed pliers and just get this one loose, and then you'll be ready to go at the bottom of this carburetor from these 4 bolts and expose the float on the bowl. Now I've got that thing on the bench, and as I said before, what we're going to be doing is take those 4 screws out of there. and that'll access the bowl area. Now, if you've just been running this, chances are it's got some gasoline in that bowl. Now, this one has been, actually I ran it dry the last time I ran it, so with a bit of luck it should be completely dry in there. But what it's resting on, this white cloth, actually is just the oil absorbed cloth you can get from any of your local auto dealer places like Napa, Lordco, or whoever you use. They're kind of handy if you keep your car in the garage too. You can throw them underneath the car and they'll absorb oil. Now, all we got to do now is just pop that bottom off, and we can have a look in the bowl. Now in this case, yeah, there's definitely a few pieces of just miscellaneous garbage by the looks that's just sitting up in that bowl. There's a little bit of corrosion that got in here too, so I may be going to the local Merc dealer to get myself a gasket. We'll see that later on after I've cleaned everything up. So what you're dealing with now is there's your float and here's your jets. So we're going to take apart first. We're going to take out that float. We'll have a look under it. Now under it there'll be a needle valve. And there's that. Now just watch it as you take it out. That little needle valve loves to do just what it did. It just likes to fall out there. So that's my needle valve. I think you can see that. We'll just put those over there and we can have a look inside. Now that area is certainly not looking too bad. We'll be washing it all clean anyways with Carburetor Cleaner here shortly, blowing out all those passages. Next in our mission here is these two items here that are the jets for your carburetor. They cover up the jets. Now you have to just get a straight bladed screwdriver in there and just be careful with them, because I mean, God forbid you break some of this aluminum housing. But anyways, there, this one's come loose. Now, when I'm looking at this one, again, I'm seeing there's all sorts of corruption in here. There's a very, very tiny O-ring, and obviously with all my hours of running it and the gas, even though I run filters, there's some stuff has slipped through. And again, in the other passage, there's certainly some buildup in there, so we'll proceed to get the next one of these jets out of here. Now inside this lower passage there's a jet, and you're going to need a little tiny straight bladed screwdriver to get in there. And you should be able to just carefully feel for that. Again, be real careful with these aluminum housings. But once you find it, you should be able to spin that out of there with very little problems. And once you get it out there, that's our jet there. And we can take a look at it. And again, there's certainly a buildup of stuff on this one. So it was perhaps good timing to be taking this off at the start of the season. Alright. Put that aside there. Now our final bit that I'm going to take apart on this is the vent off the top of this carburetor. And after that, we'll be into the cleanup section of just spraying all the passages and ports through with Carburetor Cleaner. Just a little bit, eh? Okay, our gasket on this one is actually looking pretty good. But now I've got all my ports. I can see everything to shoot Carb Cleaner through. And that will be the final part of the cleanup on this. Now the Carb Cleaner I'm using is just from the local automotive place, as I say. This one's CRC. It's a good quality product, and it's works well on cleaning out chokes and various odds and ends on your carburetor, or will work on your car just as well. But today this is for the boat carburetor, of course, and we're going to be spraying through any place that might have clogged up. Now, as I was saying earlier on, from our gas up here, we tend to get a buildup of things, and inside here, underneath the choke, I've had a fair amount of stuff build up in there over the years by the looks of it. I've got my throttle control here as well, and what I'm going to try and do is just, the gloves on makes it a little more awkward, but we're just going to try and open that valve. Oops, the can's in the way. But we're going to clean that whole area. And as you can see by the mat, there's actually been a fair buildup of stuff over the years there. So we'll just continue to give this a good cleaning out. And then I'm also going to clean up that little jet where I said there was a buildup, and it's got the little O-ring, just to clean everything off of it. And also the jet itself. And get yourself a good bright light, because all these little ports, if any of them are plugged, you're going to have yourself some headaches. But you should be able to see through all of them. If there's any doubt, get yourself some compressed air. A can of compressed air will work just as well. And make sure that those jets are clear right through. And then that's pretty well it for cleaning everything off. You're now ready to put it all back together. And putting it back together, of course, is if you were smart enough to take it apart, you're probably smart enough to put it back together as well. Little things to bear in mind is keep an eye on that little O-ring. Make sure you haven't accidentally nicked it, because that'll not be helpful to you later on. It'll show up right away if you've nicked that O-ring. So if you've got this thing to the point where you're happy with the cleaning on it and all the passages are blowing through, you can start putting it back in. Now I've put the jet in already, so I'm just putting the cover back on that one. And don't go apeshit crazy on tightening these things. I mean, just realize everything is, the metal's not exactly the world's top quality. It's meant more for saltwater corrosion rather than maximum strength. So all you want to do with everything is just tighten it in snug. You don't need a bar and an extension to try and put these things together. Now when you get around to the Carburetor Float, a good idea on it is have a quick look. check that thing over. If there's any fluid inside that carburetor, inside the float, it's no good. So you won't be able to use it. So make sure you just checked it. And if everything looks good, just be careful with that little pin. She tends to really slide around. You can put your needle in there, and you can proceed to put that back in the carburetor. And that's in there. And we just put the little retainer screw. You'll have to pardon the use of the rubber gloves, but over the years I've learned that most of the stuff you're cleaning parts with is not good for you or your kids. And if you haven't had kids, chances are they'd look like Alaska king crabs after you've genetically modified yourself. So that's pretty well all there is to that. A little bit more of a cleanup here I've just noticed on one or two of the outside edges. And I've still got to clean the bowl. And then once I'm done that, I can put my bowl back together. Well, now I've got it all back together. I can check out all my linkages, make sure nothing's stiff or sticky or acting up. And everything looks good there. Our valves all look good. So what we're going to do, put her back in the boat. And that's just going to be the total reverse of how I took it out in the first place. So rather than make a long video out of something short, I think we'll probably leave it at that. I hope this has helped you out a bit anyways. Okay, I've now got that carburetor bolted back in, and I've gone over it and hooked up my hoses and put on my little clips. That was for the gas line, for the vent, for your anti-pollution, which is your California special there, and the other overflow vent for the carburetor hose is all back on and everything's snugged down. My final one is to go back to that first step where I marked with a razor knife on both sides of that nut, and as you can see I've put it between the two marks that I had put, and that'll be extremely close. If you did it right with the razor knife, you'll be within a few thousandths of an inch, certainly within half a millimeter of no problem of having that back from the original factory settings. Okay, there we go. And now the only thing after this will be to take this puppy up to the lake. And here I am up at the lake, just running it, just warming it up a little bit. It started no problems. In fact, I didn't even have to use the choke this time, which was kind of nice. And what I'm doing for a final thing is just to check it all over and make sure there's no leaks. It's still doing a hair of hunting here for the RPM, but I'll probably just check the needle valve setting on it later on, and I think it'll be fine. It's running well.